Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Today, I'm going to be talking about the first reactions for Avatar Fire and Ash, which drops in a couple weeks. Before I get started, make sure to leave a like because it is free to do so and it does help me out a lot. But yeah, I went over a lot of these reactions. I saw maybe like 20 to 30 of these reactions, so I know the main gist of how all these critics are feeling about it. And I will say, I think 80% of the reactions that I saw are really positive. 10% of them are more in the middle on it, and then the other 10% of them, don't care for it. And I will talk about that other percent that doesn't care for it first, because most of these reactions of people that didn't like it, they stated in their reaction that they didn't care for the first one, and they also didn't care for the second one. So you're of course going to have that loud small minority of people that didn't like the first Avatar. They're just saying like, oh, it's just Dances with Wolves but in space. Then they watched the second Avatar, like, what was it, like 9 years later, and said, oh, I don't like that. It's basically just a retread of the first movie. And then the third movie, they said, it's just a retread of the second movie. So I didn't like that one at all. But also in the reactions of the people that didn't like it, they still said that it's a worthwhile experience because the visuals are amazing. The 3D is magnificent, and the visual effects, the CGI, is still the best that you're going to see out of any mainstream movie coming out this year. And so, I'm fine with that. People don't have to love Avatar, even though I love Avatar. I'm a huge fan of it. And, I watched the first one for the first time many years ago. I didn't care for it. Then I watched it again a couple years later and I was like, whoa. This is an amazing movie. I really do love it. I saw Way of Water. I thought it was fantastic. Now I'm very excited for this one. So, yeah, I have no problem with people not liking Avatar. But I think that some people take it a little too far. They need their voices to be heard over other people's voices, and they think that it has no cultural impact, as they say, but these movies still make billions of dollars. I mean, it's insane how much money they make. But yeah, 10% of people from these reactions, they didn't like the movie, but they still compliment it on its visuals and 3D aspects. Now, for the people and the reactions that I saw that thought the movie was good, but not amazing. And these people had stuff to say like, of course, they love the visuals. They liked the story, but they thought that the story was basically just kind of a retread and used some of the same moments as our previous movie, The Way of Water. And I've kind of thought about this. I've kind of looked some things up while looking at some of these reactions, thinking it's a retread of the last one. And I've saw this James Cameron interview that he did a couple days ago, and I've seen that these reactions mostly make sense because if you didn't know, the Way, Water, and Fire and Ash script were same script. They were basically one movie, and basically James Cameron wanted to split that movie into two different movies, turning into Way, Water, and Fire and Ash because he saw it was too long, and he said that they're just going to be basically going over some moments too quickly. So that's why he wanted to make them two separate movies. So it kind of does suck that this movie is called Fire and Ash because people are going to watch it and think like the people in these reactions and say, oh, it kind of just felt like Way of Water Part 2. And if you think about it, that's basically what it is because they're the same script. So maybe this should have just been called Way of Water Part 1 and then Way of Water Part 2. But then you also have that issue of movies like Mission Impossible that tried to do it, and then they basically changed after the first one wasn't a huge success. Like we had Dead Reckoning Part 1, and then they changed it after it came on physical media, just Dead Reckoning, and then the last one was Final Reckoning, when they were supposed to be Part 1 and Part 2. So maybe that was a studio decision of basically changing the names on these ones. But I think that these reactions just show that maybe these should have been Part 1 and Part 2 because they did originate from the same script. But you're, of course, going to have people that didn't care for the same things that are happening in this new one. And that's perfectly understandable in my eyes. But the people in these reactions, I think it's a bit of a retread, still thought the movie was really good. And then lastly, like 80% of the reactions that I saw thought that this movie was amazing. And in this 80% or so, I'd say like 30 to 40% of these people, like half of these people, thought that this movie is the best Avatar movie. They thought that Fire and Ash was better than Way of Water and was better than the first movie. And I'm interested to see if that's true. I loved the first movie, but I thought that Way of Water really rose above that in such a great way by adding some great new characters and stuff like that. And I'm hoping I hope that Fire and Ash can do the same. It can get better, but it doesn't have to be better than Way of Water for me because that movie is spectacular. And yeah, in some of these reactions, they've said that the characters are just so well realized in this one. Character arcs are great. They've said that some action sequences are just insane, like Mad Max Fury Road. They've compared this to like the Pirates of the Caribbean end of that trilogy at World's End, which has a huge water battle at the end. It's an amazing movie. If you haven't seen the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, what are you doing with your lives? Those are amazing. So those comparisons are so cool to hear in my eyes. And then I've also seen people say that this is the most emotional of the three movies, which is kind of surprising because Way of Water was also extremely emotional by the ending of it. And then you're seeing people say this is the horniest movie of the trilogy because you're having some relationships building here like Quaritch and Varong, which a new clip released in that clip is kind of freaky, let's just say. So yeah, there's some great emotions being built in this movie that I've seen, and some people have been saying that Spider, the character of Spider, has some big moments in this movie, a big character arc in this movie that I know a lot of people aren't gonna like, a lot of people aren't gonna care for because they didn't like his character in that second movie. But I gotta say, I really enjoyed his character, and James Cameron himself said Spider's kind of like the heart of these movies because he is basically the only human character, human friend that the Na'vi have, Jake Sully and his family have in this one. So he kind of builds that bond there. So that's really interesting to hear. But yeah, and and also people have talked about the pace of this movie. Some people said that it flies by. You don't feel that runtime because you see like things happening at every single second in this movie. Things are not stopping. And then some people have said, oh, it's a slow movie, but I've mostly seen that from people that haven't cared about the Avatar movie, so they kind of don't want to be there. So yeah, the first reactions for Avatar Fire and Ash are pretty positive. Some people can say that they're mixed, but I think those are just going to be the people that didn't care for Avatar. But as I said before, I saw like 80% of reactions saying that it's great to amazing, 10% saying that it's just good or okay, and the other 10% are people that didn't really care for it, but they still said the visuals are quite spectacular. So yeah, let me know down below in the comments what you guys thought of the first reactions for Avatar Fire and Ash. I know I'm super excited. I already have my tickets for 2 times on the opening night, so this is going to be a very, very exciting time. And make sure to leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it, but I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.